My name is Callista Monroe. I'm 18 years old. And this is the story for every daughter who's ever been told to be realistic, while her brother is called the future 6 months ago. My mother stood over the kitchen sink and lit a match. One by one, my college application letters curled into ash. My father didn't try to stop her. He just leaned against the counter, glanced at my test score, and let out a quiet laugh. 1,480, he said. Not bad, but not worth the investment. Then he looked straight at me and added, Save the money for your brother. Mason's the one going somewhere. They really believed that was the end of my story, that everything I had worked for could disappear in a few flames. But it wasn't the end, because what they didn't know was that every single application had already been submitted online weeks before. They didn't know where I had spent my entire summer, and they definitely didn't know what my grandmother had sealed inside the last envelope she left behind before she passed. By Thanksgiving, there were 19 people gathered around our table. Mason sat at the center, wearing his varsity jacket like he already had a scholarship waiting. My mother kept refilling glasses. My father carved the turkey like it was some kind of ceremony, and everyone there acted like the decision had already been made, like they all knew which child mattered more. Then the phone rang. My mother picked it up casually, but within seconds. Her expression changed. I watched the color drain from her face. You mean Callista? She asked slowly. That was the moment the illusion my family had been living in began to crumble. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, please subscribe to my channel so that what I'm about to share will touch your heart. Don't forget to let me know where you're watching from. But before I tell you what happened next, you need to understand how everything started. Let me take you back to the night it all fell apart. May 15th, 2025, 7:30 in the evening. I was sitting at my desk upstairs when the SAT email finally came through. For 3 days, I had been refreshing my inbox every 10 minutes. My hands were shaking when I opened it. 690 in math, 790 in verbal. I just stared at the numbers. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. It wasn't perfect. I knew people who had scored higher, but it was good. More than good. Good enough for the schools I had been dreaming about since freshman year. Harvard, Stanford, Princeton, Columbia. I printed the report. The paper was still warm when I held it, the edges curling slightly. The smell of fresh ink filling the air. It smelled like a future I had built for myself. Dad was in the living room watching football highlights. Mason sat next to him, half focused on the TV, half scrolling through his phone. I stood in the doorway, holding the paper in both hands. The light from the screen flickered across their faces. I got my SAT score, I said. Dad didn't even turn fully around. How bad? The question didn't shock me. It probably should have, but it didn't. That's what happens when you grow up in a house where daughters are an afterthought. 1,480, I said. He let out a short laugh and turned back to the TV. Not bad, he said, but not exactly worth celebrating. Mason glanced up for a second, then looked back down at his phone. For just a moment. Our eyes met. There was something there. Maybe guilt, maybe discomfort. But he didn't say anything. Dad kept talking. Mason scored 1,050 and he's still getting looks from recruiters. You think colleges care about test scores anymore? They want athletes, leaders, kids who actually matter. The paper in my hands suddenly felt heavy. Every late night, every practice test, every weekend I chose studying over everything else. It all felt like it meant nothing. I was thinking, I could start applying, I said quietly, applying where he replied, not even looking at me. We've already talked about this. College is expensive. We're putting everything into Mason's future. He has a real shot. I can get scholarships. I said, there's need-based aid, Callista. My mother's voice cut through the room. I hadn't even heard her walk up behind me. She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression already decided. We've made our decision, she said. The money we saved is for your brother. He needs training camps, highlight reels, campus visits. You're smart, she added. You'll figure something out without wasting money we don't have. I'm not asking you to waste anything, I said. I just need you to let me try. No. My father's voice was flat, final. We're not filling out forms. We're not spending time on applications to schools you won't get into anyway. Then he finally turned and looked at me. Mason is the future in this family, he said. You're practical. You'll be fine. Practical. That word again. I had heard it my entire life. Practical girls don't dream too big. Practical girls don't ask for more. Practical girls step aside. That was it. The conversation ended like it always did. My dad raised the volume on the TV. My mom walked back into the kitchen. Mason never even looked up. I went upstairs, placed the score report inside my desk drawer, and closed it quietly. My hands were still shaking, but not from excitement anymore, from something colder. Then I opened my laptop. I had been working on my applications for 2 months, 8 schools. Every section of the Common App completed, every essay rewritten until it felt right. I wrote about the telescope I built in 10th grade using babysitting money, about the summer I taught myself Python and created a program to track local weather patterns, about how I always looked up at the sky and wondered what it would take to reach it. 2 days earlier, May 13th at 9:47 p.m. I had already clicked submit. Every single application. I opened my email and scrolled through the confirmations. MIT had received my application. Caltech confirmed submission. Stanford acknowledged receipt. They could burn every paper in that house. It wouldn't change anything. I closed my laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. Above me was a poster of the Andromeda Galaxy. My grandmother had bought it for me years ago at a museum gift shop. She was the only person who ever asked what I wanted to become. The only one who didn't laugh when I said aerospace engineer. That night, I thought about her more than usual. She had passed away just 2 months earlier. A sudden heart attack in the garden. My grandfather found her beside the tomato plants she had taught me to grow since I was 7. At the funeral, he pulled me aside and pressed an envelope into my hand. My name was written on it in her neat handwriting. Your grandmother wanted you to have this, he said, but not yet. You'll know when the time comes. Before I could ask anything else. He took it back and walked away. I didn't understand then how important that envelope would become, but the truth doesn't need permission to arrive. It just waits. The next night, my mother walked into my room without knocking. Her eyes immediately landed on the stack of envelopes sitting on my desk, each one addressed to a different admissions office. I had printed them weeks earlier, back when I still believed my parents might change their minds. back when I thought I might need a backup plan. My mom picked one up, flipping it over slowly. "What is this college applications?" I said. "I thought we already talked about this. I worked hard on them. I just wanted to." She didn't let me finish. She called for my dad, loud enough that I heard footsteps stop outside my door. Mason was in the hallway, listening. Dad came upstairs, glanced at the envelopes, and said, "Bring them downstairs." I followed them to the kitchen, my stomach tight. I already knew what was about to happen. Mason was sitting at the table eating leftover pizza. He looked up when we walked in. For a second. Our eyes met. He knew too. Mom spread the envelopes across the counter like evidence. MIT, Caltech, Stanford, Princeton, Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, Georgia Tech, University of Michigan. "You've been wasting time on this," she said. The kitchen light was too bright. It made everything feel sharp, exposed. "It's not wasting time," I said quietly. "We told you," she replied. "Mason needs that money. You're smart enough to figure things out without college." Dad picked up one envelope, reading the address. "These schools cost $70,000 a year," he said. "You think we can afford that? There's financial aid." "We're not doing it." He dropped the envelope back onto the counter. "This is final. Callista, not everyone is meant for college. Some people are, some aren't." He looked straight at me. "You're practical. That's a good thing." Mom gathered the envelopes into a neat stack. "Practical girls stay close to home," she added. "They work. They help their families. There's nothing wrong with that." Then she turned toward the sink. She ran a thin stream of water, just enough to dampen the metal, and dropped the envelopes in. "Mom." She didn't hesitate. The lighter clicked. A small flame touched the corner of the top envelope. It caught instantly. The fire spread fast, curling the paper inward, turning white into black. The ink bled and warped before disappearing completely. I just stood there and watched. The smell hit me first. Burning paper, bitter, sharp. It clung to everything. "This is for your own good," my mother said calmly. "Watching the flames. You'll understand one day." Dad stood beside her, arms crossed. "Mason's recruitment video alone cost us nearly $7,000. He said, "We invest in winners, not fantasies." I looked at my brother. He was staring down at his plate, jaw tight, refusing to look at me. I waited for him to say something, anything. But he stayed silent. The envelopes burned down to ash. Gray, fragile, gone. Mom turned on the water fully, rinsing everything away until it dissolved into a muddy swirl and disappeared down the drain. The sink let out a hollow gurgle. "We're not being cruel," she said, drying her hands. "We're being realistic." She looked at me like she was explaining something simple. "Girls like you don't need big dreams. You can work, save, support your family. That matters too. Girls like me, not girls like him." Dad turned toward Mason and called his name. "Come on, champ," my dad said, his voice full of pride. "Let's watch your highlights again." Mason stood up slowly. For a brief second, he looked at me like he might say something. His mouth opened just a little, like he was about to speak. Like maybe he was going to defend me, or at least acknowledge what had just happened. But then he stopped. He closed his mouth, turned away, and followed Dad into the living room. Just like that, I was left alone in the kitchen. The house felt quieter than it should have been. Too still, too empty. The sink still smelled like burned paper. My hands smelled like it too. I turned on the faucet and washed them once, scrubbing harder than I needed to, then again, and again. The water ran over my fingers, cold and steady, but the smell wouldn't go away. It clung to me, like what they had done wasn't just something I saw, it was something that had soaked into my skin. If you think my parents were right to burn my college applications and prioritize my brother's future, comment right. But if you believe destroying someone's dreams is never justified, comment wrong. Because sometimes the hardest battles don't happen out in the world. They happen inside your own home. I stood there for a moment longer, staring at my hands, then turned off the water. Slowly. I walked back upstairs. I sat at my desk, opened my laptop, and checked my email. Caltech. Application received. Submitted May 13th, 9:47 p.m. I stared at the timestamp. 2 days before they burned everything. 2 days before they thought they had stopped me. A small, quiet realization settled in my chest. They could destroy paper, but they couldn't touch what I had already built. I closed my laptop and lay back on my bed, staring at the ceiling. That night, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I almost ignored it. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, empty in a way that felt heavier than anything physical. But something made me reach for it. The subject line stopped my breath. NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. Internship decision. I froze. I had applied back in March, the same week my grandmother died. I remembered sitting in that funeral home, surrounded by people I barely knew, listening to stories about her life. I remember feeling disconnected, like I didn't belong in that room full of grief and memories. And in that moment, I had taken out my phone, opened the application, started typing. I hadn't told anyone, not my parents, not Mason, no one. The application asked for my transcript, an essay about my interest in aerospace, and 2 teacher recommendations. I submitted it at midnight and didn't think about it again. I never expected to hear back. My fingers trembled as I opened the email. I read it once, then again, then a third time, just to be sure it was real. Congratulations. You have been selected for the summer internship program at NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. Paid position, $18 an hour, 40 hours a week. I sat up in bed, my heart racing so fast it almost hurt. Marshall was in Huntsville. So was I. The facility was less than 30 minutes from my house. I could do this. Without anyone knowing, without anyone stopping me, without anyone telling me I wasn't enough. I hit reply, typed one word, yes. Sent it at 11:43 p.m. Then I placed my phone back on the nightstand and stared up at the ceiling, at the Andromeda poster above me. For years, I had looked at that galaxy and wondered what it would take to reach something that far, that impossible. This is it, I thought. This is how I start building something they can't destroy. June 2nd, 6:30 in the morning. The sky was pale gray, caught somewhere between night and sunrise. I borrowed Mrs. Patterson's car. She was 78 and hadn't driven in years. I'd been mowing her lawn since I was 14, helping her with groceries, fixing little things around her house. When I asked if I could use her old Honda for the summer, she didn't even hesitate. She handed me the keys and smiled. "Just don't crash it," she said, "and eat something before you go." I nodded, clutching the keys like they were something fragile and important. I drove through quiet streets, the town still half asleep, a granola bar in one hand, my phone guiding me with GPS in the other. Everything felt surreal, like I was stepping into a life that didn't belong to me, or maybe one that finally did. When I reached the security gate, my hand started shaking again. I rolled down the window and handed over my ID. The guard checked a list, glanced at me, then nodded. "Go ahead." Just like that, I drove through. I parked in the lot, stepped out, and looked up at the building in front of me. It didn't feel real. I walked inside, my footsteps echoing slightly on the floor. At the front desk, they took my photo, handed me a badge, MS-2 25-I-NT-138. I held it in my hand for a second longer than necessary, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the practical one. I wasn't the daughter they overlooked. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. They took my photo at the front desk. I remember the camera flashing for a second. Too bright, too sudden. When they showed me the picture on the screen, I looked nervous. My shoulders were tense, my smile unsure, like I didn't fully believe I belonged there. But I didn't care. That photo wasn't for confidence. It was proof. They handed me a lab coat, a hard hat, and a thick folder filled with orientation materials. My name was printed on a temporary badge, and I was told to report directly to Dr. Adrian Whitaker. He was already waiting when I arrived at his office. 52 years old, more than 20 years at NASA. He had graying hair at the temples, thin wireframe glasses, and a coffee mug that read, "Failure isn't the end, it's data." He didn't smile. He looked at my badge first, then at me. "You're the youngest intern we've had in years," he said. There was no warmth in his tone, no encouragement. "Don't waste it." That was it. No welcome speech, no reassurance, just a warning. And somehow, I understood exactly what he meant. That first day, he walked me through the propulsion testing facilities. They were massive, concrete structures rising several stories high, covered in sensors, reinforced panels, and scorch marks from previous tests. The air smelled faintly of fuel and metal, like something powerful had happened there, and could happen again at any moment. These weren't classrooms. These were places where real engines were built, tested, pushed to their limits, where mistakes mattered, where precision mattered more. That afternoon, they ran a test. I stood behind a safety barrier, hard hat on, goggles slightly fogging from my breath. When the engine ignited, the ground shook, not gently, violently. The sound wasn't just loud, it was overwhelming, like thunder compressed into a single, endless roar. It filled the air, the space, my chest. I felt it in my bones, every vibration, every pulse of energy. For a moment, everything else disappeared. Standing there, I had one clear thought. This is where I belong. Dr. Whitaker stood beside me, watching the test data scroll across a screen. He had to raise his voice over the noise. Most people talk about going to space, he said. Then he glanced at me. We build the machines that take them there. That sentence stayed with me. I worked 40 hours a week, Monday through Friday. Early mornings, long afternoons. I analyzed data sets, ran simulations, sat through design reviews where engineers twice my age argued over details most people would never notice. Nozzle angles, pressure thresholds, fuel efficiency curves. I learned CAD software faster than I thought possible. Ran propulsion models, adjusted variables over and over again, watching how small changes could shift entire outcomes. Every day, I learned something new. Every day, I proved to myself that I could keep up, that I belonged in those rooms. Every evening, I drove Mrs. Patterson's car back home, parked it quietly in her driveway, walked into my house like nothing had happened. No one asked where I had been. The first week. My dad asked once, "Where were you, library?" I said. He nodded. Good. Stay out of trouble. That was the end of the conversation. He didn't ask again. Mason had left for a quarterback camp in Florida right after school ended. 2 weeks, thousands of dollars. When he came back, my parents threw him a welcome dinner. Lasagna, garlic bread, everything he liked. Dad asked him question after question about drills, coaches, opportunities. Mom watched him like he had already made it, like his future was already decided. I sat at the table, eating quietly, listening, the way Mason talked. You would think recruiters were already calling, but I noticed the small things, the way he avoided eye contact with Dad, the slight tension in his voice, the pauses. He was exaggerating, maybe even lying to keep their expectations alive. No one asked about my summer. Not once. Not where I had been. Not what I had done. By my 4th week at NASA, Dr. Whitaker handed me a project. Microthruster efficiency improvement. He placed a stack of research papers in front of me. Some were decades old. Some were recent. See what you can do, he said. That was all. I spent weeks running simulations, adjusting variables, testing configurations, 47 different runs, each one refining something small, nozzle angles by fractions of a degree, fuel mixture ratios, control system responses, small changes, but meaningful ones. By the 8th week, I had results. A 12% efficiency improvement over the current design. It wasn't revolutionary. It wasn't going to change everything overnight, but it was real. It was measurable. It mattered. Dr. Whitaker reviewed my work in silence. He didn't rush, didn't comment. He just studied the data. Then he nodded. This is solid. Callista, he said. A pause. This is publishable. He looked at me differently after that. Not like a kid. Not like an intern. Most graduate students don't produce results like this. I nodded, trying to stay calm, trying not to let it show how much that meant. I didn't tell him I was still in high school. I didn't tell him about my parents, about the kitchen sink, the fire, the words. I didn't tell him that the people who were supposed to believe in me didn't. Because here, none of that mattered. Here, the only thing that mattered was what I could build. I didn't tell Dr. Whitaker anything except what the data showed. That was enough. On August 10th, I was sitting in the NASA cafeteria during lunch, halfway through a sandwich. When I opened my Caltech portal, I wasn't expecting anything major, just another routine check. Then the notification appeared. Your application is under final review. Early decision results will be released December 15th. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Final review. That meant I was close. Closer than anyone in my house would ever imagine. I took a screenshot immediately and hid it in a folder on my phone labeled Recipes. No one in my family had ever opened that folder. No one ever would. That was the point. August 15th was my last day at NASA. Before I left, Dr. Whitaker called me into his office. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, studying me in a way that felt different from before. We have a program called Pathways, he said. It's for students we want to keep long term, internships during the school year, and possibly a full-time position after graduation. He paused. Are you interested? Yes, I said immediately. There was no hesitation. I'll recommend you, he continued. You should hear back by November. He stood, shook my hand, and said something I didn't expect. You've done exceptional work here. Don't let anyone convince you you're not capable for a second. I almost told him everything about the kitchen, the fire, the words, but I didn't. I just thanked him and left. That night at dinner, my dad barely looked at me. Mason starts varsity next week. He said, big year ahead. My mom nodded, then turned to me. Callista, you should get a job. Help out with bills. Retail or something. I set my fork down. I've already been working. Where? She asked the question, but she didn't wait for the answer. Didn't even look at me long enough to care. She just nodded and went back to talking about Mason's schedule. That was how it always worked. That night, I checked my bank account. $7,200. 10 weeks. 40 hours a week. I had earned more in one summer than they had spent trying to build Mason's future, and no one knew. Somehow, that made it better. September came, and senior year started. Mason made varsity, not as a starter. Brady Wilson was the senior quarterback, and he was good, really good, the kind of player who actually had a chance. Still, Mason made the roster, third string. Technically, but my dad never mentioned that part. September 5th was the first game. The stadium was packed. Friday night football in a small Alabama town felt like an event bigger than anything else. We sat halfway up the bleachers. My mom had brought a blanket. Even though it wasn't cold, my dad wore school colors like it meant something more. Mason stood on the sideline in jersey number 12. From where I sat, I could see everything. He was nervous, adjusting his helmet over and over, watching the coach, waiting. The game wasn't close. Huntsville led 35-7 by the fourth quarter. Brady had thrown 4 touchdowns. Clean, confident, controlled. He was the real thing. With 6 minutes left, the coach pulled him out. Mason went in. The game was already decided. He handed off the ball twice, then threw one pass. It fell short. Not even close. The receiver had to stop and come back for it and still couldn't catch it. The clock ran out. Game over. In the parking lot. My dad was already on the phone. Yeah, Mason had some great plays tonight. He said, scouts might have been watching. None of that was true. My mom was smiling, talking to a neighbor. You can just tell, she said proudly. That's a Division I athlete. I stood there, listening, watching them build a version of reality that didn't exist. And for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt certain. Because while they were chasing something imaginary, I had already built something real. Mason didn't say a word. He got into the car and stared out the window, jaw tight. I could tell what he was thinking. He knew none of it was real. He knew he had only been put in because the game was already decided, because it didn't matter. But he didn't correct them. Back home, my dad called my grandfather. I was in the kitchen getting water when I heard him. Yeah, Dad. Mason had a great game tonight. Really stepped up. That wasn't true. He might even start next week. He added, also not true. I stood there, glass in hand, listening to him build a version of reality that didn't exist. Then his phone rang again. He answered quickly. Yes. This is Mr. Monroe. A pause. About Mason. Another pause. I could hear a faint voice, but not the words. Uh-huh. Highlight film? How much? His expression shifted. Excited now? That's expensive. But I see. Every kid needs one. Right. Okay. Send me the details. He hung up just as my mom walked in. Who was that recruiting service? He said. They make highlight videos for colleges. 3,200. I almost laughed. It wasn't a scout, not a coach, just a sales call. A company selling overpriced dreams to parents who wanted to believe. We should do it, my mom said immediately. We already invested in camp. This is his future. My dad hesitated, then sighed. Fine. I'll call them tomorrow. That's when I understood. There had never been any scouts. Just hope, dressed up as fact. And my parents were willing to pay thousands to keep believing it. Mason was in the living room when I walked past. He looked at me. I looked back. For a second. I saw something in his face. Guilt. Maybe exhaustion. Then he looked away. What I didn't know at the time was this. Months later, when we finally talked, he told me the truth. He had seen my NASA badge, back in July. He had found my backpack in the kitchen. The zipper was open. My badge was right there. MS-2025-INT-138. NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. He picked it up, looked at it, understood everything, and then he put it back, zipped my bag, said nothing. He kept my secret, the only person in that house who knew the truth, and he protected it. I didn't know it then, but it mattered, because Mason wasn't the villain. He was just a kid trying to live up to expectations he never chose. October 1st. Late at night. My phone buzzed. An email from Caltech. Portal update available. My hands were shaking when I opened it. Thank you for your early decision application. Your decision will be available December 15th at 5 p.m. Pacific Time. 2.5 months? I took a screenshot and hid it in my recipes folder. The next week, another email came in. From Dr. Whitaker. Your pathways paperwork has been submitted. You're on the short list. Expect an update by mid-November. Also, the team is still talking about your micro-thruster work. You have a real future in this field. 2 secrets now. Caltech pending. NASA pending. No one in my family knew. I was building everything quietly, step by step, data by data. And the best part was, they couldn't destroy what they didn't know existed. By mid-October, we had Sunday dinner with relatives. Aunt Karen and Uncle Mike came with their kids. The house was loud, crowded. Mason sat at the head of the table next to Dad, like it already belonged to him. The conversation turned, like always, to football. "How's the season going?" Aunt Karen asked. "Good," Mason said. "We're 5-2. You starting yet?" He hesitated. "Not yet. But Coach said Dad cut in. He's being modest. Scouts are already paying attention." That wasn't true. Mason knew it. I knew it. But no one else did. "Which schools?" Uncle Mike asked. Dad smiled. "Can't say yet. But we're very optimistic." Glasses were raised. To Mason. Everyone drank. Then the attention shifted. "What about you?" Callista Aunt Karen asked. "Any college plans?" my mom answered before I could. "Callista's taking a gap year," she said lightly. "Not everyone is meant for college right away." The words landed hard. I didn't argue. I just focused on my plate, cutting my food into smaller pieces. My cousin leaned toward me. "But you're really smart," she whispered. "Didn't you score like a 1,480? I nodded. "Then why not apply?" Before I could answer, my dad spoke again. "Tests don't mean much anymore," he said. "The real world is about performance. Some people are book smart, some are built for life." I didn't need him to explain which one I was. He raised his glass again. To Mason, built for greatness. Everyone drank. I didn't. I just sat there, thinking about the Caltech portal, about NASA, about the money in my account. After dinner, I carried dishes into the kitchen. Mason was already there. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "For what?" He glanced toward the dining room. "You know." I studied his face. He looked exhausted. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm fine." He wasn't, but I didn't push. He picked up a towel and started drying plates. "You're going to do something big," he said. "I don't know what, but you will." Then he walked out. I stood there, listening to the water run. He didn't know everything, but he knew enough. He knew something about all of this was wrong. I just didn't know how to fix it yet. November 10th. I was sitting in AP Calculus when my phone buzzed in my bag. I wasn't supposed to check it, but something made me look. An email notification. From NASA. I waited until the bell rang, then walked straight to the bathroom. I locked myself in a stall, sat down, and opened the email with shaking hands. NASA Marshall Space Flight Center. Pathways Program. I read every word twice. "Congratulations. You have been selected to continue in our Pathways Student Internship Program. Spring semester schedule available. $20 per hour." For a second, I just stared at the screen. Then I typed back. "Available. Thank you. I accept." I hit send immediately. Sitting there in a school bathroom, backpack at my feet, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, I realized something simple. NASA wanted me back. I stayed there for a few minutes, just breathing. $20 an hour. Spring semester. A real path forward. It wasn't just a summer anymore. It was something bigger. 5 days later, another email came in. Caltech. Not the decision yet. Just a notice. December 15th, 5 p.m. Pacific. I added it to my calendar. Set reminders. Counted the days. I didn't tell anyone. I kept building everything quietly. November 20th came. I was in my room. Door locked. Curtains closed. Laptop open. I refreshed the portal. Once. Twice. The page loaded slowly. Then the word appeared. Congratulations. Just that. One word. Sitting there in the center of the screen. I froze. Then the rest of the page filled in. On behalf of the California Institute of Technology, we are pleased to offer you admission. I refreshed again. It didn't change. It was real. I scrolled down. Financial aid, grants, work study, contribution, over 4 years. More than $270,000 in support. I would graduate debt-free from one of the best engineering schools in the world. I sat there in the dark, the screen lighting up my room, and felt something inside me finally break open. Not pain, relief. Like something that had been waiting finally had space to grow. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run downstairs and show them, to prove everything they said about me was wrong. But I didn't. I took a screenshot, saved it, closed my laptop, and went downstairs for dinner. Dad was on the phone again. Mason's highlight reel is going to impress a lot of people. He was saying, we invested in getting it done right. $3,000 for something no one important would ever see. I sat down quietly. Mom had made spaghetti. Mason was already eating. Silent, eyes down. No one asked about my day. No one asked if anything had changed. I ate my dinner and thought about California, about palm trees, about labs, about a future they knew nothing about. That night, I lay in bed thinking about December, about Thanksgiving. 22 people would be in our house, and I still didn't know if I would tell them. On November 21st, my mom started planning, lists everywhere, food, chairs, schedules. She moved through the house like everything had to be perfect. This family does Thanksgiving right, she said. I almost laughed at that, as if we were really a family, as if we all wanted the same things. A few days later, my grandfather called. I answered. How are you? Kiddo, he asked. I'm good. Really. He always knew when I wasn't telling the whole truth. Yeah, I said again. He was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother would be proud of you. My throat tightened. For what? For being who you are. For not letting them make you smaller. I didn't know how to respond. He cleared his throat. I'll see you Thursday. I've got something for you. The letter. Yeah. He added softly. It's time. We hung up. I sat there holding my phone, thinking about her, about the garden, about the telescope, about the way she always believed in me. 2 days later, a package arrived. California Institute of Technology, Office of Admissions. I grabbed it before anyone else could see, took it straight to my room, closed the door, opened it carefully. Inside was everything. A welcome letter, campus information, a map, a pennant with the Caltech logo. I spread it all out across my bed, touched each piece slowly. This wasn't an idea anymore. It wasn't a plan. It was real. And for the first time, it was entirely mine. I didn't tell anyone. Not when the email came. Not when I accepted it. Not when everything I had been working toward quietly locked into place. I kept it all to myself, because for the first time in my life, something was completely mine. November 15th. Another email arrived. Caltech. Not the decision yet. Just confirmation. December 15th. 5:00 p.m. Pacific. I opened my calendar and set 3 reminders. 1 month, 1 week, 1 hour. I wasn't going to miss it. November 20th. I was in my room, door locked, curtains drawn, laptop open on my bed. I refreshed the portal. Once, twice. The page took forever to load. Our internet was slow. Always had been. Then one word appeared. Congratulations. It just sat there for a second before the rest of the page loaded. On behalf of the California Institute of Technology, we are pleased to offer you admission. I didn't move, didn't breathe. I refreshed the page again just to be sure. Still there, still real. I scrolled down. Financial aid, grants, work study, contributions, more than enough. I would graduate debt-free from Caltech. I sat there in the dark, the glow of the screen filling the room, and felt something inside me finally shift. Not anger, not sadness, something stronger. Like everything they said I couldn't do had just been proven wrong. I wanted to run downstairs, show them, say, you were wrong about me. But I didn't. I took a screenshot, saved it, closed my laptop, and walked downstairs like nothing had happened. Dad was on the phone again. Mason's highlight film is going to be huge. He was saying, we made sure it's top quality, $3,000, for something no one important would ever see. I sat at the table. Mom had made spaghetti. Mason was quiet, eating without looking up. No one asked about my day. No one noticed anything had changed. I ate in silence, thinking about California, about Pasadena, about labs filled with people who actually believed in what I could become. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Thanksgiving was coming. 22 people, and I still didn't know if I would tell them. November 21st. My mom started planning everything. Lists covered the kitchen counter. Food, tables, chairs. She moved through the house like everything had to be perfect. This family does Thanksgiving right. She said. I almost said something, but I didn't. Because we weren't a family the way she thought we were. A few days later, my grandfather called. I answered. How are you? Callista. I'm good. Really. He always knew. Yes, I said. Softer this time. He was quiet for a moment. Your grandmother would be proud of you. My chest tightened. For what? For not letting them make you smaller. I didn't know what to say. He cleared his throat. I'll see you Thursday. I've got something for you. The letter. Yeah. He said. It's time. After we hung up, I sat there thinking about her. About the garden. About the telescope. About how she was the only one who ever believed me when I said I wanted more. November 23rd. A package arrived. California Institute of Technology. I grabbed it before anyone else could see, took it straight to my room, closed the door, opened it slowly. Inside was everything. A welcome letter, a course catalog, a campus map, a banner with the Caltech name printed across it. I spread everything out on my bed, ran my hands over each piece, making sure it was real, because this wasn't just acceptance. This wasn't just a future. This was proof. Proof that everything I built in silence mattered. Not everyone rushes into college, my mom said. Her tone lighter now, softer words. Same message. Mrs. Henderson smiled at me. With your SAT score, you have so many options. Engineering, computer science. Have you thought about it? My dad waved it off. She's practical. Staying local. That's the smart move. Practical again. Mason sat quietly, shifting in his seat. He kept glancing at me, then looking away. Emma leaned closer. You were always the smart one, she whispered. Mason's smart too, I said. She shook her head. Not like you. Everyone knows it. I didn't answer. At 2:30, my mom called everyone to the table. The seating said everything. Dad at the head, Mom at the other end, Mason beside Dad. I was pushed down the table, between cousins. I carried dishes, poured drinks, refilled plates. At 3:15, everything was ready. The table looked perfect. Dad stood for grace. We're grateful for this family, and especially for Mason's success this season and the opportunities ahead. Nothing about me, not even a sentence. I kept my head down. Then the phone rang. Loud, sharp. Everyone froze. Mom looked at the caller ID. Unknown number. California. Should I answer? Let it go, Dad said. It rang again. Grandpa spoke up. Could be important. She picked it up. Hello. A pause. Her expression changed. Who is this? Another pause. The room went silent. Caltech. Every head turned. She looked straight at me. You're asking for Callista. 22 people staring. She covered the phone. Did you apply to Caltech? I stood up. Give it to me. Her hand shook as she passed it. This is Callista Monroe. The voice on the other end was calm. Hello? Callista. This is Dr. Elaine Park from Caltech Financial Aid. We've been trying to reach you. Yes. I received the package. Wonderful. I'm calling to confirm your grant of $68,000 per year. Is that acceptable? Yes. We'd also like to invite you and your family to campus next month. I'll be there. Excellent. And Callista, congratulations. Your application was outstanding. Thank you. I hung up. Silence filled the room. Dad stood slowly. What just happened? I looked at him. I got into Caltech. You applied. His voice tightened. You burned my applications. I said. I submitted them online before that. Mom's face went pale. We told you no. I didn't need your money. I replied. I got full financial aid. Uncle Mike spoke first. How much? $68,000 a year? Gasps spread across the table. That's over $270,000, someone said. Mrs. Henderson started crying. I knew it. I knew you could. Dad was shaking now. You went behind our backs. I worked for this, I said calmly. When did you find out? A week ago. And you didn't tell us. I held his gaze. Would you have listened? No one answered. Grandpa stood, walked over, and hugged me. Your grandmother would be so proud, he said. Then he pulled back. There's more. Isn't there? I nodded. I've been working at NASA Marshall since June. My mom gasped. What internship? Propulsion lab. 40 hours a week. The room erupted. You worked at NASA. I earned $7,200. I added. More voices. More shock. But I just stood there. Because for the first time in my life, they were finally listening. That's where you were all summer. My dad's voice cut through the noise. You said you were at the library. You didn't ask. I said. I told you I was working. You just assumed it didn't matter. The room went quiet again. Aunt Karen spoke softly. Callista, NASA, here in Huntsville, 22 minutes from this house. I said, Building 4550, Propulsion Systems Lab. Dr. Adrian Whitaker was my supervisor. I looked around the table. I drove there every morning, came home every night, parked at Mrs. Patterson's so you wouldn't see the car. No one spoke, because no one asked where I'd been. Mrs. Henderson covered her mouth. That's incredibly competitive. NASA internships get hundreds of applicants. I know. And you got one at 17, yes. Uncle Mike leaned forward. That's not just impressive. That's career level. Pathways leads to full-time positions. They invited me back. I said, spring semester, $20 an hour. Grandpa was still beside me. His hand rested on my shoulder. Tell them about your project. I turned to him. How do you know about that? He smiled. I made a call last week. My chest tightened. You talked to Dr. Whitaker, I did. He said calmly. He told me everything. The room leaned in without realizing it. He said you're one of the most talented students he's worked with. Said your microthruster research was publishable. My throat burned. He told me you ran 47 simulations, improved efficiency by 12%. No one moved. He said you have a future in aerospace, if you choose it. I blinked hard, forcing the tears back. My dad finally spoke again. You did all of this without us. I looked straight at him. I did it despite you. My mom started crying, not quietly. Tears ran down her face, smudging her makeup. Mason suddenly stood up. His chair scraped loudly against the floor. Everyone turned. I'm sorry, he said. His voice shook. Sit down. Dad snapped. This isn't about you. Yes, it is. Mason's voice got stronger. It's about all of us. About what we did to her. Dad stood too. Mason, don't you spend $10,000 on me. Mason cut in. The room froze. Camps, recruiting videos, training, that academy. He swallowed hard. I'm a backup quarterback. Silence. I've played 12 snaps all season. He continued. 12. All when the game was already over. His voice cracked. No scouts. No offers. Not even small schools. Dad looked like he couldn't breathe. I'm not Division I, Mason said. I'm not even close. Then he turned to me. She did all of this on her own. Every word landed harder than the last. I didn't earn what you gave me, he added. She earned everything you took away. No one had anything to say, because for the first time, the truth was louder than all of them. My breath caught as Grandpa kept reading. She has Eleanor in her, he said, voice shaking, quiet, brilliant, built to last. The room was completely still. I watched her for 17 years. I saw what you all missed. She doesn't need to be loud to be extraordinary. She doesn't need permission to be brilliant. My chest tightened. The money is hers when she earns it. And she will. Don't let them waste her. Grandpa's voice broke. Tell her I'm proud. Tell her she carries my name for a reason. Tell her the stars were always meant for her. Silence. No one moved. Then the tears started. Aunt Karen, Mrs. Henderson, Emma. Even Uncle Mike wiped his eyes. Grandpa folded the letter carefully and handed it to me. My hands trembled as I took it. I read the words again. Callista is the one. For the first time. I truly understood. I wasn't just named after her. She had believed in me, before I even knew how to believe in myself. The tears came then. Not from pain. From relief. Grandpa pulled me into a tight hug. She always knew. He whispered. From the day you were born. I buried my face in his shoulder and cried. One by one, people came over, hugging me, telling me they were proud. Even Uncle Rick, who had barely spoken all day. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I should have paid more attention. I nodded, unable to speak. My parents didn't move. They stayed at the table, my mom crying, my dad staring down. Mason was still in the other room. The attorney's voice came through one last time. I'll send the paperwork tomorrow. Congratulations. Callista, your grandmother would be proud. The call ended. I stood there, surrounded by people, but not the two who should have been closest. Grandpa spoke gently. You can stay with me. The spare room is yours. I don't want to cause problems. I said, You're not the problem. He replied, You never were. My dad finally stood. We need to talk. Not tonight. Grandpa said firmly. His voice changed. Stronger. She just found out her grandmother believed in her more than her own parents did. She just found out everything you told her was wrong. No one argued. I went upstairs and packed a bag, laptop, clothes, my Caltech packet, my NASA badge. When I came back down, Mason was sitting on the stairs. His eyes were red. I'm sorry, he said again. It's not your fault. I saw your badge. He admitted quietly. Back in July. I knew. I looked at him. You protected me. He shook his head. I was protecting myself. I sat beside him. You are special, I said. Just not the way they wanted. He nodded slowly. What you did? Building all that alone? That's the bravest thing I've ever seen. I hugged him. Then I stood up and walked to the door. I didn't look back. At Grandpa's house. Everything felt calm, familiar. Pictures of Grandma everywhere, smiling, watching. I set my bag down and looked at them. She had always seen me, even when no one else did. I lay on the bed and closed my eyes. For the first time in months, I could finally breathe. The next week felt different. My parents called over and over. I didn't answer. I let every call go to voicemail. I didn't answer their calls. Just let the voicemails pile up. We need to talk. This is ridiculous. You're being dramatic. I deleted them all. December 1st. The paperwork came through. I signed everything within an hour. Entered my bank details. Sent it back. December 3rd. I checked my account at breakfast. The number made me stop breathing. $82,200. My earnings? My grandmother's trust. All real. I texted Grandpa. It's there. He replied from the next room. She always kept her promises. The next afternoon, there was a knock. Grandpa opened the door. My mom stood there. She looked smaller. No makeup. Eyes swollen. Can I talk to her? She asked. Grandpa looked at me. I nodded. We sat in the living room. He stayed nearby. Quiet. What you did was wrong, she said. I met her eyes. What exactly did I do wrong? You went behind our backs. I built a future you told me I couldn't have. We were trying to protect you from what I asked. Succeeding. She started crying. From failure. From disappointment. From you getting hurt. I didn't fail. I said calmly. I got into Caltech. I worked at NASA. I did everything right. She shook her head. But you lied. No. I said. You didn't ask. She broke down completely. I thought I was doing what was best. For who I asked quietly. She didn't answer. I let the silence sit. Then I said, when you're ready to see who I actually am, call me. Until then, I need space. She stood up slowly. At the door. She paused. I'm sorry, I know, I said. But that's not enough yet. She left. No resolution. But I felt lighter. Because I didn't need her approval anymore. January came. Mason got into a local community college. No announcements. No celebration. Just quiet acceptance. He texted me. I got in somewhere. It's a start. That's great. I replied, I'm proud of you. He sent another message. I'm sorry I let them treat you like that. You didn't. I wrote back. They did. You just tried to survive it. He asked if we could meet. We got coffee the next week. Talked for hours. He admitted he always knew something was wrong, just didn't know how to stop it. I told him it wasn't his job. He said he might study business, figure things out for himself. That's the smartest thing you've said. I told him. He smiled a little. We hugged before leaving. A real one. For the first time in years. I think he'll be okay. He just needs distance from their expectations. February came quickly. I packed for Caltech, clothes, books, my telescope. Carefully wrapped. My parents offered to help. I've got it, I said. February 10th. My dad showed up. I opened the door. I want to apologize, he said. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. We stood there, facing each other in silence. Okay. I was wrong. My dad said. His voice was unsteady. About you. About Mason. About what success means. I nodded. Yes. You were. He swallowed. Can you forgive me? I looked at him. Really looked. He seemed smaller, like something inside him had finally cracked. Maybe. I said. But not today. He didn't argue. What do you need? He asked. I need you to earn it, I said. The way I earned everything? He flinched. See me for who I actually am, not who you decided I should be. I held his gaze. The daughter who got into Caltech, who worked at NASA, who built a future you tried to destroy. I didn't mean, yes. You did, I said quietly. You meant it when you said it. You believed it. He went silent. You believed I wasn't worth investing in. I continued. You have to own that before anything changes. He had no response. If you want to be part of my future, I said, you have to earn that place. Then I stepped inside and closed the door. Grandpa was standing in the hallway. He nodded once. She'd be proud, he said, glancing at Grandma's photo. I smiled. I know. February 15th. Moving day. Grandpa and I packed everything into his truck and drove to the airport. Before I went through security, he hugged me. You're going to do great things. Thanks, Grandpa. He pulled back slightly. And Callista, your grandmother was right. You carry her strength. I hugged him again. Then I walked forward. Didn't look back. On the plane. I opened my laptop. Read my acceptance letter one more time. Welcome to the class of 2030. 3 weeks later, I was in my dorm. Room 237. Sunlight poured through the window, lighting up the mountains in the distance. Everything felt open, possible. I thought about my grandmother, about her letter, about how she saw me before anyone else did. My parents had been texting, short messages. We're proud of you. We miss you. Can we visit? I replied politely, but briefly. Not yet. Maybe someday. That was up to them now. They had spent years building the wrong future, ignoring the right one. And when the truth came out, they had no choice but to watch everything collapse. But I didn't need them anymore. Not their approval, not their money, not even their understanding, because I had already built something they couldn't take away. My grandmother had known it all along. She gave me her name, her belief, her proof. I was never invisible. They just never looked. But I was done waiting, done shrinking, done being practical. My name is Callista Monroe. Quiet, brilliant, built to last. And the stars. They were just the beginning. If you've ever had to build your future in silence, if you've ever been overlooked in your own family, tell me, what are you building right now that no one else can see? Because you were never invisible. They just weren't looking. If you would choose to walk away, build your future quietly, and prove your worth through your actions just like I did, comment yes. If you would have stayed and fought for their approval instead, write no. And if you're still thinking about what you would do, write time. Sometimes the hardest choice isn't winning, it's choosing yourself. When I look back at everything that happened, I don't just see pain, I see clarity. I used to think love meant being chosen, being supported, being seen by the people who were supposed to care the most. But this journey taught me something deeper sometimes. The most important person who needs to believe in you is you. When they burned my applications, it felt like they were burning my future. But in reality, they only burned what they could see. You don't need permission to grow. You don't need approval to become who you're meant to be. And you are not defined by the expectations that others place on you, especially when those expectations are too small for your potential. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is step away, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. To choose yourself, to protect your dreams, to keep building, even when no one is watching. If this story stayed with you, I just want to say thank you. Truly. Thank you for listening, for feeling it with me, for being part of this moment. And right now, wherever you are, take a second to breathe. Maybe stand up, stretch a little, walk around. Give yourself that small pause. You deserve it more than you think. And if you see yourself in this story, then you're already someone valuable in this community. Your voice matters here. Your story matters here. So don't be afraid to share it. Leave a comment. Tell me what you're building, what you're fighting for. I read them, and they mean more than you know. If this video gave you something hope, strength, or even just a moment of reflection, consider subscribing to the channel, liking the video, and sharing it with someone who might need to hear this today. Not just for me, but for all of us here, building something better together.